Okay, sorry about that. So I'm just going to continue. I thought I was recording a conversation, but I wasn't recording a conversation. Okay, so indentured servitude. So it seemed to work out good for everybody, but there's an issue. Okay, I want you to think for a second. Put yourself in the head of a person who, has these indentured servants coming over. All right, they're a labor supply that you don't have to pay for. But once their indenture is done, you got to give them land, and you lose a worker. So you're losing two ways once that indenture's over. Human nature, people. All right, you don't want to lose a good thing when you got it. You don't want to have to go out and get new workers. Not only that, you're dealing with less land. So let's say you got a worker, and we'll call that worker, I don't know, I'm just going to throw a name out there, Muhammad. And Muhammad is, working along. He's paying off his debts. He's doing his thing. But he's got a boss, and I'm just going to call his boss Mamie. Okay? So Muhammad is working for Mamie, and Mamie paid his voyage over here, and now he's working for 6.5 years, and he's seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Pretty soon, his debts are going to be free. He's going to be a free man. He's going to have his own land, and he's going to be all set. His indenture is going to be over. But Mamie's going to lose Muhammad as a worker. Mamie's also going to lose land. So, Mamie will go, so Muhammad, you know that plow you broke the other, couple months back there? Yeah, unfortunately, I have to charge you for it. Now, I know you don't have any money, so I'm just going to add a few months to your indenture. It's no problem. We'll add a few months to your indenture. So, Muhammad, now that you're working that other field there, you're using more of my supplies. I'm going to have to charge you for that. You see how this works? So, basically, the landowners are starting to find ways to basically not pay off their debts. They're finding ways not to give it. So it only takes a matter of time before these indentured servants get upset. And that's going to lead to what we call Bacon's Rebellion. Okay? Not bacon the kind you eat, bacon as in Nathaniel Bacon. Okay? Life is going to be very harsh for these indentured servants. Virginia climate is going to be very difficult. Okay, oops. So let me tell you something about this Virginia climate. If you were a colonist that was moving to the northern colonies, the environment of the northern colonies was very beneficial for your health. So you could basically expect to add 10 years to your life expectancy versus if you were living in Europe, if you were moving to the northern colonies. The southern colonies, because they were hot, because the work was very hard, and because there's a lot of diseases, because it's so much hotter with mosquitoes and everything, life is harsh. You couldn't expect, an average worker can expect to have 10 years reduced in their life to go down south. On top of that, the landowners are not living up to their indenture servitude contracts, and they're not releasing those landowners. So 1676, big year that you got to know. 1676, you have indentured servants who are upset that they are not getting what was promised to them, are banding together, and they're rebelling against their landowners. This is what we know as Bacon's Rebellion. Bacon's Rebellion is huge because those landowners are rebelling, or the workers are rebelling against the landowners. They're going out, they got rum in their bellies, and they are raising hell. And before the end of it, you had a few of them killed, and they had to bring out the militia to suppress it. You had more than 20 rebels that were hanged in this incident known as Bacon's Rebellion. So, put yourself back in Mamie's shoes. Mamie is a landowner. She's been trying to screw her workers so that, it's better for her so she can still have workers and still have land. but that backfired big time on her. She narrowly escaped with her neck. You know, they had to go and hang some people, call out the militia to put this thing down. This is not good. And she realizes indentured servants aren't going to do it for her. But it's been some years now. She's been over here for a while. She built up quite a fortune for herself, so she got some extra money. Now, one thing that she could do was just hire workers, but that wouldn't provide as big enough profit for her. So, after Bacon's Rebellion is going to be a major turning point in American history. You should be writing this down. 1676, Bacon's Rebellion, major turning point in American history. Mamie and the landlords need labor. They need cheap labor. And they know they can no longer exploit the indentured servants. Where do they turn? Slaves. This is where African slavery comes in. Okay? So, take a look here. 17th century, 1600s. Look at these numbers. In Spanish America, there's about 300,000 slaves. In Brazil, which is Portuguese America, 560,000 slaves. In British America, 263,000 slaves. Not that much. I know it's still a lot of people, but not that much compared. Dutch, New Netherlands, 40,000. French, which would be Canada at this time, 155,000. The Danes, only 4,000. And look at the British Caribbean. That's the sugar colonies. That's Jamaica, Barbados. Okay. Look at British North America. British North America had 10,000 slaves in the 1600s. That's it. Only 10,000 African slaves in all the 1600s. That's nothing. Look what happens in the 18th century, 1700s. This is after Bacon's Rebellion. 400,000. Okay? It goes from 10,000 to 400,000 people. It's huge. All told, let me take a look here. It's going to be about 7.4 million slaves are going to be imported into the Americas. Most of the slaves are going to be brought to the sugar colonies. We're going to talk about the sugar colonies in class. The sugar colonies are the islands: Dominican Republic, Haiti, Barbados, Jamaica. Think about the people that are there. You ever wonder why the people in Jamaica, Barbados, what have you, look different than people from the Spanish colonies, like Mexico, Peru? It's because they weren't relying on native populations. You needed massive amounts of slaves to be brought in to work those sugar plantations. Sugar was the big cash crop in the Caribbean. Sugar was something that had really caught on in Europe, and that was a lot of money at that time. The British northern colonies didn't have the land for it. You need a tropical climate to grow sugar. And we have a subtropical climate in the American South. The only place that could really be suitable for it would have been Florida, but Florida was still controlled by the Spanish at that time. So that helped explain some of that. The aftermath of Bacon's Rebellion is basically the free men are going to rebel against the wealthy, and they're not going to take that anymore. The rebellion is going to be suppressed, but the rich are going to make sure that it's not going to happen again, and they're going to find ways to stay rich. And they resort to importing African slaves. Let that sink in. This is about money. African slaves were farm implement. They were people used as cheap labor so that other people could make more money. Period. Importing African slaves were easier to control. They did not have the same culture as the landowners. British citizens that were brought over from Britain were used to living under British common law. And that meant that they could sue the landowners if the landowners were not working up to their contract. They spoke the same language, they had the same values. They at least had some understanding of the world that the owner lived in. African slaves were captured against their will, put into shackles, put into a boat, and packed in like cattle. They were brought over and sold at auction, those who survived, to the highest bidder, where people would inspect them and see how healthy they were. And for the males, how good of a farmhand you could be, how strong of a back you had. And for females, how many more slaves that you could breed. Or, if you were a white landowner, then maybe you took a fancy for some of the girls as well. That was African chattel slavery. American slavery is chattel slavery. Chattel means the slaves are the legal property of their owners, and they are not considered people. It's going to be a huge precedent in American history, because black people were not legally considered people until the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment's not going to come out until 1868. And it's not going to be enforced until the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Let that sink in. Because slaves were not considered people, they were considered property. If slaves had babies, those babies would be the property of the landowner. And those babies would then be slaves as well. So here you see a baby that is being ripped from its parents. The importation of African slavery was abolished in 1800 in the United States. It was illegal after the year 1800 to purchase a slave from Africa. Slavery continues in the United States until 1868, or 1865, I'm sorry. So slavery continues for 65 years after the slave trade was abolished. How does that happen? That happens because the slaves were breeding, and the offspring of slaves were considered slaves. I want you to think about this. I want you to think about the development of slavery. I want you to think how it relates to economy and geography. I want you to think why we had slavery be such a big problem in the South and not the North. And I want you to consider those questions for when you come in next time and we talk about the legacy of slavery in America. So when we go back to our question, how did the different geography of the different colonial regions impact the development of the economies of those regions? I'm going to augment the question a little bit. I know we didn't talk about the North, so let's focus on the South. How did the geography of the South impact the development of the economy of the South? There's your homework.